Hello and welcome to the Bestseller Experiment, where we continue to discover what makes a bestseller and inspire you to start, finish and publish your book. I'm Mark Stay.
And I'm Mark DeVoe, and we'd like to say thank you to everyone who's joined us, wherever you might be in the world, whatever time, whatever year it is that you're listening to this show. Welcome, welcome, welcome to this wonderful, wonderfully exciting episode we've got for you today. And before we start, we'd like to thank our patrons. Those are the wonderfully dear people who contribute some of their cash to keep this podcast on the road and keep Mark and I showing up each week to talk the absolute wonders of publishing and writing. So this week, we would like to thank the absolutely lovely Tiffany Jo Howell for joining us. And if you'd like to be like Tiffany and come to the Bestseller Experiment website to join up as a patron, bestsellerexperiment.com/support. And I'm not even going to tell you what you get. I want you to show up and have a surprise. Look up, literally, if we could do the whole podcast on just the things you get from being a patron, but we won't, go and have a look and support this podcast. Keep it on the road, folks. Mr. Stay, how are you today?
I'm very good. That would be our longest episode ever, wouldn't it? You know,
that probably would, actually.
Yeah.
Listed
absolutely.
All of those. And then we could do an even longer episode of all the successes everyone's had of joining as a patron and all the magic that happens when you share the love, so to speak. But Mr. Stay, you have a new short story. You're knocking them out of the park right now. What's going on?
Well, I launched my short story Caesar on Watling Street, which was a free short story for my newsletter subscribers, which was lots of fun. So there's an ebook version and there's an audio version as well. So I recorded the audio. It's gone down quite well. People have liked it, which is really nice. And I'm indebted to Julian Barr for his editing wisdom on that, because it's set in the ancient. It's a Witches of Woodville story, but set 2,000 years ago during Caesar's second invasion of Britain. And Julian's knowledge of the ancient world saved me from looking like a complete buffoon. And the cover art is by the magnificent Andrew Bowden, who you may recall helped us put together the ebook for Back to Reality. Remember those late nights trying to get all that right?
Gosh, yeah.
So Andrew's fantastic at that kind of stuff. Love him. So yeah,
it's funny. And you know what I've been working on, Mark? I've been working on some very exciting habit-based exercises for the Academy. I'm loving I've been looking at habits for many, many years, but I've been using habit building in my own life in the last couple of years. I can tell you, utterly mind-blowing how it's changed my day, my week, my life, my mental health. It's absolutely brilliant. And so I'm now adapting all of that to start to build into a very focused writing habits exercises and some kind of short videos for the people in the Academy. So if you are interested in habits, folks, the Academy is where it's happening. If you want to really get your writing habits down, if you're using the 200-word challenge and you love that, or maybe you're thinking of starting it, you want to go deeper, come and join me in the Academy and we'll have some fun there. But habits was something else going on.
Speaking of habits, for the first time in my life, I'm on a diet. Okay. Which, I know from here up, I look svelte and thin.
You look very svelte, sir. You look like a superhero there.
But down here, it's dad bod central. I can tell you. And, it's one of these things I looked at myself and I thought, oh no, do I surrender to this or do I? So I've because we got the film premiere in October, I guess, so I guess, it's been moved once. It's supposed to be out tomorrow when we're recording this.
I know, the irony, right?
Yeah, it's coming in just before Halloween. So I think, actually, if I'm going to do the red carpet, darlings, I want to see if I can get rid of this belly. So I'm on because the habits thing. And I must confess, this is something I've plugged on the on the podcast, is rewarding yourself with biscuits and stuff like that. And I've been a little indulgent with the rewards. Oh, I've written 200 words, stuffed my face with half a packet of hobnobs. So and it's the grazing. It's because I like to get up and then do a bit of housework, and I'll walk through the kitchen and go, oh, biscuit, and then biscuit, and those start to add up. So I've got this diet app it's one where you have to log everything you eat, and you're given a certain amount of calories per day, right? Yeah, and you're zapping barcodes and stuff like. And I'm doing this. I'm thinking, this is accountability. And that bit when the little girl Lex in Jurassic Park, and she recognizes the Unix system, and she goes, "Oh, I know this." And as I'm doing this, I'm going, "Oh, I know this. This is accountability. I can do this. I can actually
Totally.
and I feel so confident that I'm going to lose weight, because if I can write a bloody novel, I can clock the words every day. I can lose a bit of weight. So yeah,
love it, Mr. Stay. No, that is brilliant. And do you know what though? This is the crazy thing. It is the crazy thing is that you're a past master at the 200-word challenge, so you absolutely know. You have the DNA to make habits stick and get it to work. And the thing is, once this is the whole reason I've been banging. Like, this is the big reveal now. The big reveal is the 200-word challenge isn't just for writing. It's like a foundation baseline for the habits for the rest of your life. It literally, once you get one habit going, getting the next habit going is much easier. And it's a bit like anyone who's ever learnt more than one extra language. You know, that kind of idea that if you learn, say, French, and then you go and study Spanish. So imagine you speak English, you learn French, and then you study Spanish. Spanish is way easier because you've gained something from learning French and already speaking English. And you know, these people in like Scandinavia, hello to all our Scandinavian friends out there listening to the podcast who speak like 30 languages, right? You know what I mean? I mean, every
incredible.
Dutch person, Icelandic, Finnish, it's brilliant. We love you. Love you. Norwegians, it's ridiculous. You make us feel so utterly useless when it comes to languages. I love it. But it's because they teach kids at school early on, and then learning extra languages becomes easy. And it's the same with habits. So I love it. Well, listen, join me in the academy, Mr. Stay, because I'm going to be banging on about this for the next.
This isn't just about. This is a way of life. We should start a religion. That's where the real money is.
Oh, I already have.
Why am I not surprised? That's not even a joke, is it? That's not even a joke.
It's called habitology, Mark. Haven't you heard of it? It's all the rage. Tom Cruise is into it now. Habitology. If anyone's interested. There's no like sacrificing lambs or anything. It's really like, you know.
Oh, I'm out.
No, but it's the thing I love about habits is once you actually start applying them in your own life, you start to realize just how massively powerful they are, and it's really inspiring. It's like it's about compounding. It's the compound effect that we all kind of understand at some level, but until we start doing habits, we don't realize the benefit of it. So yeah, listen to me bang on about this for the next couple of months, mate. Seriously, I'm so excited about this. But no, brilliant. And I'll be checking in with you, maybe not on the podcast, but I'll be checking in with you to see how it's going. I've used one of those apps before, and it is quite mind blowing when you get the awareness of just like I cut down on sugar. The minute I started using one of those apps, I cut down on sugar so much. Yeah, I won't buy any cereals for my kids that have got more than 6 grams of sugar on the box. That's my kind of like baseline now, because oh my God, it's scary. Like one flake and you've basically taken your daily allowance. It is. You're done basically. Anyway, we have a fantastic returning guest who I'm very excited to hear about. So Mark, tell us about our wonderful guest today.
We welcome back the delightful Erica James, who is the author of 23 international bestsellers. She's had top 10 bestsellers like Swallowtail Summer, Coming Home to Island House, Letters from the Past. They're beautiful books. They're loved all over the world. She's received the Nielsen Silver Award for sales of over 250,000 for 2 of her books, Love and Devotion, Tell It to the Skies. And we've got her back. She's got a brand new novel, Mothers and Daughters. And look at that cover. That is just gorgeous cover.
Isn't it?
And we discuss, amongst many other things. And also, hang around at the very end of the show. We've got an audio clip from the audiobook read by Juliet Stevenson. So that'll be a little bonus right at the end of the show. But we discuss, amongst other things, putting your characters through hell, the relationship between author and editor, and making sense of the world with storytelling.
Awesome. Let's dive in and listen to Mark chatting with the joyful Erica James.
Erica James, welcome back to the podcast. It's a genuine treat to see you. How are you today?
Do you know, I'm very, very well. All the better for seeing you, obviously. And I was trying to remember when we last chatted like this. I mean, it was down in London. It was face-to-face, you know.
We had, yes, it was face-to-face. We had tea. We had proper tea in china cups, and we had cake. It was very, very civilized. Yes, very, very civilized. Yes. But here we are
today, where I've had to bring my own tea.
Sorry about that. we are here, Erica, to discuss your gorgeous new book. Now, for the YouTube viewers, I'm going to hold this up, Mothers and Daughters, which is, I think, your 24th novel. Oh, look at that. What a pro. You've got your copy there.
Except will it be back to front? I don't know.
No, it's all fine.
Like on Instagram, it's always back to front.
But what's marvellous about this, the publisher sent me a proof copy, which is just delightful. And the bookmark, I picked up the book and it's got this lovely texture to it. And I look on the back and it says,
yes.
Plant this bookmark to enjoy summer flowers, which is wonderful. So tell us what am I going to find when I plant this?
I have no idea. I cannot take any of the credit for that. That's the publicity department at HQ Stories. Possibly Joe Thomas, who arranged all of that. I've got one too, actually, said spinning round. Ta-da-da-da. And I think we should leave it a couple of more weeks and then we should get planting, basically. Just Excellent. Put that in a pot.
I'm going to give this to my wife, Claire, because she's the gardener. Knowing me, if I plant it, it'll be triffids or something like that. So, it's best leave it to the expert. But it's such a lovely idea.
Yes. I think there's going to be a plant off, or it should be suggested a plant off, because a number of people have received one of these books. And I think we should all see what grows.
Definitely. Well, this is coming, I think, at the perfect time when we're recording this. The world is in a very, very sorry place. But you look at this cover, and there's blue skies, blue oceans, a yacht. There's a garden brimming with life and hope. There's a new path there. But tell us, Erica. Tell us about Mothers and Daughters.
Mothers and Daughters. Well, I'm uniquely qualified to write this book because I'm a mother of two sons, which of course means I'm not qualified at all. But it'll be the sequel of that will be. But it started off really, Naomi, there are three central characters to the book. Naomi, recently widowed, her two daughters, Martha and Willow. Martha is the eldest daughter and is the bossiest one of the two. Anyway, their father died a couple of years previously. And so their mother has been in a state of not reinventing herself necessarily, but living life anew, gradually coming to terms with the loss of her husband. And the eldest daughter, Martha, has decided it's time to take her mother in hand, that they should sell the family home, and that Naomi should downsize. All well and good, except this is the last thing Naomi wants to do because she's got plans of her own and they don't include downsizing. And she's worried how her two daughters are going to take the news that she's about to deliver. So that's, yes, rattled on there, giving that's the premise of the book. But it's, of course, then what follows, But
this is what, particularly with any kind of standalone novel, you are taking what is possibly the most pivotal moment in a person's life. That's what good story is, isn't it? You take a giant left turn in someone's life, and you focus on that, and that's great storytelling, isn't it?
Well, hopefully, yes. Hopefully, great and storyteller. I know I don't put those together, but I just say I'm a storyteller. But yes, that's the ideal. That's, as writers, as you're a writer yourself too, Mark, we know that that's the ideal that we're looking for. And I don't know about you, but when I'm writing, I never know whether I'm achieving that. I just hope. I just keep hoping. And as you said, this is my 24th novel, and somehow I've got away with it so far. I remember one of the many, many years ago, published by Orion, one of the reps took me out on the road. Lovely guy. Raymond, do you remember him?
Oh, yes, yes.
Back in the day, yes. And he said, "You'll be forgiven for writing one turkey, Erica, but not two." And those words have always stuck with me. I've always lived in fear of delivering the turkey, and with every manuscript I've ever delivered, I've always been petrified of that. Those words have haunted me down the years.
That's such a sales term as well, isn't it? That's typical of the sales department to come up with that. That's really interesting. The public will forgive you once, but not twice. So, yes, and that's always at the back of your mind when you're writing. Does it? The thing you write, well, I mean, you look at this cover, you think that's completely heartwarming. That's but you really do test your characters, don't you? You really do put them through hell. Do you take a secret delight in that, Erica?
You know I do. The funny thing was with the jacket, holding it up again, it looks a very sunny-natured book, doesn't it? And I have to say, there are some dark undercurrents that run through the book once we've got the story up and running. And my youngest son, my genius youngest son, when I was telling him, I said, I'm not so sure that the jacket really does justice to the story. And he said, you would only be happy if there was a dark cloud rolling in on the horizon, wouldn't you? I said, yes, exactly. Could we not just have a little dark cloud over here? It's a hint of bad things to come. So yes, in answer to your question, I do put my characters through it, and I don't set out with that intention, because the way I write, make it up as I go along. I start out with my characters. Something bad may have happened recently that sort of drives the story on, or whatever. But I introduce all the characters, and then I sit there and I think, okay, everybody's on stage now. What happens next? Right. And I sit there staring at the screen. Come on then, what happens next? Tell me. And somehow it happened. And I had written quite a few chapters of this book. And there's a new character comes on stage, so to speak. And right at the end of the chapter where these two characters are conversing, this new character asks a question that I just didn't see coming. And then that had this huge knock-on effect. It's where, the characters just feel so real that they are writing. I know it's a bit of a cliche, the characters wrote the story themselves for me. And sometimes that happens, and you have to go with it. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's like pulling teeth, slow and painful.
But that question of asking what happens next, is it often, I mean, for me, I like to try and think of the worst thing that can possibly happen, the worst, the most terrible thing to come through the door, the greatest disaster to befell someone. Is that always the case with you? Or do you like to be kind to your character sometimes, just occasionally?
Well, it's a mixed bag. It might depend on my mood when I wake up in the morning. Who's in for it today? My editor has just read the next book, which I delivered earlier in the year, and she said, "Erica, I just didn't know what you were going to do towards the end. I just didn't know whether, was somebody going? Were they all going to make the end of the story?" And with that one, I know I kept umming and ahhing, and I'm not saying anything. But with this one, there's invariably there is a death within the storyline. I think I'd have to put my hand up and say, well, I know I'm sitting here and I'm laughing and I look full of the joys of spring, but I do know that there's a darker side to me. It's sounding creepy now. No wonder my sons have moved so far away from me. One in Tokyo and one in LA. But there is, I feel things very strongly. So that will affect my mood. If I'm watching something, like the news at the moment, which is just so, it's heartbreaking what we're watching unfold. This is Europe 2022. And I can feel that that's really weighing on me at the moment. And I don't want that. I don't want that to intrude the book that I'm now writing. But whether or not that, will affect what I put down on the page, who knows, ultimately. Yeah.
I mean, storytelling for me is how I make sense of the world. And the things that are going on at the moment, the things that have gone on the last few years, which has been, testing to everyone it's just getting those anxieties on the page is a kind of way of sorting the puzzle into some sort of shape. Is that the same for you?
I think, yes, it's a sense of control, isn't it? That with writing, I feel that this is something I can control. I know when I started out writing, all those many, many years ago, I wrote because I was unhappy. My marriage was falling apart, and this was my escape. And by putting words down on the page, creating this happy little village where these characters were living, this was a breath of fresh air, my first book, I could control. That was something that was within my control. And, I suppose it's what we would now call, that was my happy place. And that, out of all of my books, probably, it's certainly the shortest, certainly the lightest, perhaps the funniest in places. But I wrote that at my sort of lowest ebb, you could say, my saddest.
That's really interesting, because my Woodville books are my happy place, and that's a little village. Again, terrible things happen, but it's my escape from the world. You mentioned your editor there, and the big change since we last spoke is that you've changed publisher, but it has reunited you with your editor, Kate Mills. And that relationship between author and editor is a close one, isn't it? There's a lot of trust there, isn't there?
Yes, and that's been one of the joys. It was a huge decision that I made. Didn't have to make it, but I felt that I needed to. I'd been previous publisher, getting on for a quarter of a century. Yeah. But being reunited, or just the thought of being reunited with Kate, we had worked on 14 books together. Wow. So that's quite, that's quite a long time. It's longer than some marriages. And also Lisa Milton as well. And that sort of put a spring back in my step. And I think, we all need that in life sometimes, don't we? Sort of to be rejuvenated. So that's particularly joyful for me.
But that thing of, because they get to see what the public doesn't, which is the first draft, or, the first draft that at least that you deliver to them, which we often say on here is going to be imperfect, is going to be, that it's not going to be quite right. And there's a huge trust in handing that over. Do you still get, even after all these books, do you still get nervous handing over that draft?
Oh gosh, yes, absolutely. It's my baby. I'm having to just hand my baby over. I'm probably slightly better, perhaps. It varies. Some books you feel more confident about than others, perhaps. Some books feel more precious to you. That's not to say that some books, it's weird. It's just that certain books come from maybe a different place within inside, because you're at a different time in your life, different things going on. But yes, having recently delivered a new book and heard back from my agent and my editor that they both love it, positive. But Kate is then going to let me have the editorial notes, yep. And that's the panicky moment then, because helpful suggestions, that's criticism, isn't it? Let's not beat about the bush. Didn't quite hit the nail on the head there, Erica. Could you do? It doesn't matter how they dress it up, it still comes down to the same thing. And with a previous book, Letters from the Past, before my agent had read a word of it, I told him what the word count was, and he said, you're going to have to lose 30,000 words, don't you? It's like, I didn't know that. If I'd known that, I wouldn't have written all those extra, And then, so he and his assistant made me go through it. And actually, once you start slashing with the knife, it gets easier. So I got rid of 30,000 words, and it was still a big book. Then it went to my then editor. and I still had to lose some more. And it was getting a bit tough by that stage. But but it was just funny that my agent said, even before he'd read a word, that 30,000 words would have to go.
So, and were you at all aware of that when you were writing that draft? Were you thinking it's a little long in the tooth, or did it feel right to you?
I knew I had a big cast of characters because it was a sequel to Coming Home to Island House, and I moved the story on by 20 years. So the characters I had in the first book, I wanted those to continue. But I also had new characters because the children that had been born in that first one, they're now 20, and I wanted their story to now sort of not to be the entire focus, but to be important. So that was, it was a challenge, but I got there in the end. That's the one thing I am stubbornly determined, that if something has to be done, I will do it. I might grumble.
Yes, I think we're all in touch. If it's any consolation, I'm knee deep in edits at the moment as well, so it's you have that moment of grumbling, but then you roll your sleeves up and get on with it, don't you?
Yes, exactly so. Yeah, because you do want it to be the best book you can possibly produce, because you don't want to let your readers down. Don't want any criticism. You don't want people saying, "Well, it would have been a lot better if she'd lost 30,000 words." So you have to, as hard as it is, you have to take objective opinion at some point.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think once you've been through that experience of having had readers give you feedback and whatever, you do realise that ultimately they're the ones who take ownership of it and will tell you at an event if it's too long. Yeah, right. Give it a rest.
That's right. I'm trying to think what the worst criticism is I've had at an event. Now there's a whole other talk that we could do. Let's not go there. Although I did recently see that you did your first post-lockdown book event at Bury Library. And no, that's coming up. Yes,
is that coming up?
Yeah,
how are you feeling about that? Because it would have been a while, and I know you're not the biggest fan of public speaking, so.
No, I'm better, obviously.
Yes.
With it. We all do. I'm sort of nervous. It will feel very strange. It'd be nice if we have a good size audience. And the library's been very good. They're saying, sort of try and manage it incredibly well in terms of, safety, socially distanced. So that there is that, and I'm triple jabbed. So hopefully, if I'm ill, I won't be too ill. And then, my eldest son, Edward, he has been, I've nicknamed him Dr. Ted because he's always dishing out the medical advice and telling me, you're not leaving the house now, you're not having anyone in, all things which I have accepted. And he's not overly keen for me to do these events because he doesn't want something bad to happen to me. And actually, so a nice little segue back, doing the professional thing here, taking it back to mothers and daughters. That, part of the storyline is where the daughters have come of age, where they're sort of, or particularly the eldest, telling the mother what to do, that role reversal. And certainly my eldest has taken that mantle on. He's taken it to heart. My welfare, he's uppermost in his mind.
Quite right too. Although if it's any concern, I did an event at the Faversham Literary Festival a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, I saw that on Twitter, yeah.
And I was up there, I thought, I've missed this. I've really missed this. It's great. I really, but then I'm a big show off. But this, let's bring things back to mothers and daughters, because this is, folks, it's Mother's Day in the UK on Sunday, 27th of March. And this is, if that doesn't say ideal Mother's Day gift, I don't know what does.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, well, I'll do mine as well.
There we go. But I don't know if you saw, Erica, there was a Caitlin Moran column recently which was inspired by a tweet she saw from a writer called Andrew Mackey, who said that, look, we spend 3-4 quid on a card for our mothers, but why not just buy a book? Because, you get a card, you throw it away, whereas the books, make a much nicer gift. So will you be... I've been seriously thinking about getting people books instead of cards because, they last for a much longer. Is that something... I mean, certainly we'd recommend people do it for this. Absolutely.
Wouldn't we just?
Yes. Is that something you might start doing?
It's a fantastic idea, isn't it? But then, if it was me, I would spend hours choosing the right book for the person. And then worrying myself silly that, I wonder if they really did enjoy it. But they put the book in the bin like they would a card once they've had it on the mantelpiece for a week, But I think it is a lovely idea and one, as authors, we should take to heart. Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, we're all about we like to inspire writers to achieve goals, whether it's finishing the first draft or just something as simple as writing 200 words a day. But, you've achieved magnificent goal with this and all the books that came previously. And I saw that you treated yourself recently to a special gift. I saw this on your Twitter. So you treated yourself to a little gift from Audi, your local Audi dealership. Now, what most listeners might not know about Erica is you're a serious petrol head. Tell us about this gift that you got yourself, because I'm not a big petrol head, but I saw it and I went, oh, that's nice.
Even you thought.
Even me.
But it's very interesting because where I live, my male neighbours have admired the car. The females, not so much, not at all. Wouldn't even notice that I've got a new car, perhaps, and that's not to be down on them in any way. But yes, my postman said, "Oh, new car." Now the thing you have to bear in mind is this is my third red Audi A5, and I know that I'm consistent, if nothing else. I love the A5, and I love a red car. So it's a done deal. Each one has been red. And I have a personalised number plate. So it's the same number plate. So one friend said to me the last time I upgraded the car, but no one will know that you've got a new car. And I just said, but I will know.
Yes.
That's all you need to do. So it's not, I'm not trying to be braggy and, oh, look at me with my new car. I'm being more discreet than that. But anyway, but I'd ordered the car back in October from the Audi dealership. And because there was a worldwide shortage of chips for cars, not efficient chip variety, but electric tricky bits. I was bits, not that much of a petrol head. So they said, oh, you probably have the car maybe next April. So I thought, oh, okay, fair enough. And then partway through January, I received a phone call saying, oh, good news, your car's arrived. Just like, but I'm not ready for my new car, just psychologically. I haven't, and also needed to get the money sorted out as well.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to find that money back, behind the cushions on the sofa. Anyway, so I then said, well, I'm not ready for it yet. And the girl, she was just a little bit firm with me on the phone. She said, well, it's got to be, you've got to have it by the end of the month because obviously, sales figures.
Yeah. Sales departments again.
Yes. So I said, all right, then I'll pick it up 29th of January when it's my birthday. So that's why it ended up as my birthday treat.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah,
well, we hope you have many, many, many miles of happy, safe driving in it. Erica, thank you so much for speaking to us. Folks, mothers and daughters, like I said, it's got Mother's Day written all over it. I mean, almost literally. Do treat yourself. Do discover, that Erica's world. It's just amazing stuff. It will break your heart, but you'll come out. It's cathartic, isn't it, Erica? You come out the other end feeling
you'll come
hopeful.
Out stronger for it. Yes, it doesn't break.
Do check it out. And Erica, let's not leave it so long next time. Let's speak to you again real soon. And take care, and hope to see you out there on the bookshelves.
Thank you. Bye.
What are your writing dreams? Finishing that book, quitting the day job, becoming a best-selling author? Well, over 4 years, we've studied the advice of over 300 best-selling authors who've collectively sold over 500 million books. And we are excited to announce the Bestseller Academy. If you're ready to take your writing to the next level with accountability, craft, and coaching, your bestseller dreams are now only a click away. To find out more and apply, visit bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. That's bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. Whenever I hear Erica talking, it always fills me up. She's got such a lovely just way about her, isn't she? She's always laughing and smiling and happy. And I mean, 23 books going on 24 now. That's absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, she's amazing. And I did get in touch with her today, actually, because the event that we talked about in Bury St Edmunds Library has actually happened. And I said, oh, how did it go? And there's some lovely pictures of her online signing stuff. She said, yes, the event went really well, had nice, enthusiastic audience who asked plenty of questions, which is always a good thing. And I did this thing at Faversham a few weeks ago, and God, I've really missed it. I've missed meeting readers and meeting new readers and talking about books with other authors on a stage. It's terrific. I'm glad it's back, and I hope we don't have to go back to those dark lockdown days.
I can imagine, and most authors anyway. I mean, it's not like we get let out very often during a normal year, right? So it's even more a treat, I think, for people to meet their fans and make that connection and realize there are people out there that absolutely love it. In fact, there's a lot of people out there for Erica James. I mean, 250,000 on 2 of her books, and they only gave her a silver award. What's that all about? Silver? 250,000 books? She should be getting like a gold like plaque or something. That's ridiculous. It's amazing sales, and that's just like for 2 of her books. Yeah. Honestly, silver. But I mean, what do you have to do? What do you have to do to get gold? I mean, what is it? $1 million? $500,000?
It might be $1 million. I think Gillian Flynn. I think we had one for Gillian Flynn with Gone Girl when she hit $1 million. They got a gold one, or platinum one.
There's not that many books that have actually sold. I mean, over 1 million copies, really. When you look at the stats, I remember looking at a list. I think there's something on Wikipedia. It's quite an interesting list, actually, and it talks about the biggest selling books of all time, and how accurate it is, who knows? But I was amazed to look at how many novelists has actually sold over 1 million of one copy. But it's not an easy feat for sure. But that's phenomenal. And in terms of Erica's seed, what was it? A seed bookmark. I couldn't quite visualize what that was. Was it a bookmark that you put into a pot of soil?
Yes, I don't have it with me. I've given it to Claire, but if you watch the video of me talking to Erica, I hold it up, and it's a lovely bookmark. It's got this lovely sort of grainy texture. It's got seeds in it, and so Claire's going. I'm not going to put it because I'll just kill it. But Claire's going to put it in one of the pots out the front, and you get lovely, flowers or something. We don't know what's in there, so we'll report back on that as well.
Maybe I'm sure it probably isn't, but maybe it could be a beanstalk. Maybe it could be a beanstalk. You could get into all kinds of shenanigans. But one of the other things I loved about what Erica said was she talked about a new character entering her book and asking this question. And it's really interesting to hear that, because it made me kind of visualize this idea of an author who's actually observing the play that she was talking about with all these characters walking on. And it's like she's in the audience. Erica's sitting in the audience watching it and kind of maybe to it a bit, but also letting them improvise a bit and let them come up. And so it's almost like this letting go of control of what's happening in the story, which I love. And I'm sure you probably experienced that now that you're kind of rolling with a lot of your kind of story ideas.
I'm going through it at the moment. There's the fourth Woodville book. There's a character who's completely new to the series, and I'm just getting to know him. And he's quite a complex character. He's got a bit of a dark side to him, but I want you to sympathise with him. So I've got to dig deep with this. And so I'm just in the process of discovering who he is now. He's a soldier. He's been through some stuff. So it's been really interesting getting to know him and how he works. And I don't think I'll really get to know him well until that first draft is done. And then I think I can go back and, and it is a bit like working with an actor. And, Mike Leigh, the director, and he was a theatre, did things like Abigail's Party and Life is Sweet and stuff like that. He spends 6 months with his actors before they start filming, and they build everything from the ground up.
Wow.
And he insists that you go out and act in character. And I think it was David Thewlis who was in his film Naked, and David Thewlis plays this horrible man who stands on street corners yelling at people. And he made David Thewlis go out and be this character on the streets of London. And he's doing this, he's snarling at people and walking along and making these comments. And they're watching him from a van and sort of filming him for kind of, and then, but what happened, David Thewlis tells the story, he says, an actor friend of his went, "Oh, hello, Dave, how you doing?" And he's like, "Oh no, I've got to stay in character. I've got to stay in character." But this person kept persisting. "No, what's wrong? You're really angry. What's wrong with you? What's going on?" And in the end, he says, "Go away." And Mike Lee's in a van over there to break character, But anyway,
love it.
That's by the by. But that thing of, I think thinking you can just, there's occasionally characters do come along fully formed, but you've still got to get to know them through the process of that first draft, I think.
But allowing that space for them to show up as well. I love it. I think I think there's definitely, I think there's a middle way. There's a magic between, guiding yourself a bit if you wanted to kind of have a rough kind of plot of where you're heading, but then be open to everything, and expect nothing in, always be open to what might show up in the moment, and be willing enough to roll with it if it takes you by surprise or you get fascinated by it. I think it's a brilliant approach. And obviously Erica knows what she's talking about because she's done this a few times before. And so this is what I love about interviewing authors who've written so many successful books. Like there's success leaves clues, folks. There's magic in the words, that we heard Erica speaking about. The other thing that she mentioned as well was...
Sorry, just to say, I picked up the proof. I opened a couple of pages and flicked through it, and she does have this... and do pick up one of her books and have a look. She does have this magical way of just... Oh, I know exactly who that is, that character. They do... Obviously, she's worked hard to get there, but on the page, they feel very, very real. Anyway, as you were.
And talking of real, actually, one of the other points I was really interested in talking about was the fact that you kind of alluded to how real life events can affect your writing. Now, we talked about this last week, specifically around, COVID, should we write COVID in? Should we have our characters with masks? But this is a different take on it. This is how it affects us as writers, like the state of mind that we go into. Like if the world is falling apart, is that suddenly reflected in our book because we're feeling heavy before we even sit down to write? And I think that's a really important, point to jump in on, because I think I can't think we can probably put a lot of things aside, but on one level, you do probably pull into your writing a lot of what you're currently personally experiencing, whether it's personally or around you in the world. Well,
that's it. I mean, this is the thing of storytelling is making sense of the world. At least that's what it is for me. But you got the thing, the process is my escape. That's my happy place. I come down here first thing in the morning and I write for a couple of hours, and that door is shut and the rest of the world does not exist. I'm in that little village with those characters having fun with them. But what I bring with me into the room is, what I'm going through at the moment, what I've seen, and those things that are troubling me. And I put them on the page and try and make sense of them and try and put them into some sort of order and tell a story that hopefully will connect with other people as well. So it is, there's an escapism in writing, but the writing has to have that kind of human truth to it, that kind of human reality to it. Erica talked about this, the cover of this book is bright, it's inviting. You might think, oh, this is going to be a bit of fluff, but no, she goes to some very, very dark places. She was saying, can't we just put a cloud on the cover on the horizon?
Right. Which is funny because when you listen to Erica, when you listen to hear her voice and you hear how upbeat she is and joyful, that's also something that John York talked about, didn't he, a lot, that everyone has a dark side, that there's that kind of like yin and yang for every single person in the world. And I think it's fun to play with that, but it's also fun to kind of know that is real. It doesn't matter how positive you might be, you're always going to have down days. No matter how negative you are, you will have some good days as well, right? The other thing she mentioned, which was really interesting, was this idea of moving back to an editor that she had previously worked with. And it really struck me. I look back on a lot of the creative things that I've done. It really makes me realize just how much an author and editor are actually like a partnership. A lot of people think, well, do you need an editor? But I personally look back at my kind of creative exploits in my life so far, and I look at like my music, and I had the most success and I had the most enjoyment when I worked with my music partner Ian in Urban Myth Club. It was a duo. It was the two of us. We worked together and we bounced ideas off. And then I look at this, like the podcast, me and you, here we are, like bouncing. It would be it. And then when you get an editor, it makes you realize that, especially if you build a relationship with them over time, they really start to know you, and you start to understand each other. And I think a lot of people haven't probably ever experienced that. Is that something you've experienced in terms of editors? Because you
absolutely. Absolutely, no question. I mean, with Robot Overlords, I had Gillian at Gollancz, who I knew personally and knew I could trust her. There was complete trust there. And at Simon & Schuster, I've got Bethan, who I worked with. I knew her at Orion, but so there's a great level of trust there. Now, what was interesting, the editor who signed me was an editor called Anne Perry, and we really clicked. We really got on. She loved the books, but then during lockdown, she had the opportunity to become an agent, so she'd left. And there was that moment where I was thinking, oh no, am I going to be lumbered with someone that does? Because I had this with an agent once. I was with an agent who had to move on to other things, and I got passed down to a junior agent who I think actively hated me. It was just one of these things where you think, oh no, they don't get me at all, So I thought, oh, who am I going to get? And then Bethan's name was, and I was so relieved because I know that Bethan is a wonderful human being. Really passionate about her authors, because when I worked at Orion, I was the Amazon account manager, and she was constantly coming over saying, can we do this with Amazon? Can we do that? And let's check the sales. She was really on it. And I thought, oh, this is great. And she gets the books, and that relationship is great. For my short stories, I won't go to anyone but Julian Barr now. And for any indie stuff, I will go to Julian, because Julian already, even just a few short stories in, is well aware of all my bad habits already.
And no doubt willing to remind you of them, hopefully.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And same with Andy doing the covers for the short stories. I have a shorthand with Andy now. And it is that thing. Very early on in the podcast, we spoke to authors about building a team. Because, this is a solitary thing. I do come in here on my own and close the door on. But when you're putting it out there, you've got a team of people that you trust out there. And it doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time. But you will find your own team of people who will, help you get through the tricky bits.
Well, that's the other thing. The other thing as well that I think people forget is that this is also a process of discovery. It's okay to go through a couple of different book designers, a couple of different editors, but the more of this that you do, the more you find the people that you click with. It's almost a bit like dating in some ways. You're trying to find the people that you're going to have a wonderful experience with, rather than just a kind of professional relationship and it's all over. But you actually get each other. You get each other as human beings. You understand each other's foibles. You can support each other through the rough times and celebrate together during the great times. So, and in a lot of the coaching I do, and I've talked about this in the academy as well, about this idea of a dream team. It's like, you have to kind of identify who's missing in your life and create the job vacancy for them. Like, even if it's just an imaginary title, so they'll come into your life, you become aware that you need that person, and you want a specific kind of person as well. It's not just like any old editor, it's the right editor for you. So this is really important, because like you say, it's a solitary business, the writing part of it, but everything else, you can't do alone. You could just stand on a street corner and try and sell your book, I guess, but we need bookshops, we need websites, we need publicists, we need editors, and the list goes on and on.
We need readers.
Readers help.
This comes back to the
really
live,
do help, don't they?
The live event. Yeah, they do. They really do. Otherwise, you're just shouting into a void. Right? The live event thing, going there, meeting new readers, getting them on board. Your newsletter. You have that one-on-one relationship with them. So it was great sending out the newsletter with the free short story, because my newsletter, I've invented a fictional character called Araminta Cranberry, who's the librarian of Woodville Village Library, and she sends out the newsletters. People have started replying to her in person. It's fantastic.
Love it.
They're all in on the joke. They're all like, if you see Mr. Stay, will you tell him so and so and so and so? And I reply in character. And it's great. I love it. But it's that thing of nurturing those readers who, are in on the joke and part. And you see those authors who have these, people have set up Facebook groups about them. I got invited to a Ben Aronovich one recently, and it's great because it's all fans of Ben talking about his books and all the things around them, So it's one of these things, again, we've talked about when you've arrived. And
you've made it when, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of those things, I think. It's
cosplay in your very own Facebook
group. Yeah.
It's not set up by yourself as an author, but some raving fan of yours who loves. Oh, we don't actually have a bestseller experiment fan group, do we? Well,
what we do have is the unofficial bestseller experiment readers group.
Readers group,
reading group, yeah.
Which I knew nothing about. Ironically, I one day discovered it. And like, what? What's this?
Yeah. So if you want to sign up to that, folks, it's I'll put a link in the show notes. You can check that out. And they interview members of our Facebook group and the Academy when they have a book out. And there's a nice little archive of video interviews there. We're definitely checking out.
Such a great community. Talking of great community, Mr. Stay, what's been happening on social media this week?
We've had your 99p rant has kicked things off. I can tell you that. I mean, again, on the VXP group, it's one of those arguments that I don't think will ever be solved. There's a definite divide. I mean, obviously, these promotions can make a huge difference, and certainly, if you do this right, you can be off to the races. But I think your point.
For anyone that missed it last week, we should probably just explain that I went off on one and had a rant about 99p books and how we're totally undervaluing ourselves as authors by selling it. But what was the response like, Mark? What was the response like?
It was quite divided. But I think it's interesting. I think the indie authors are much more pro 99p because it is that thing of you have a loss leader, but then the other books are priced. So I think one of the things you were ranting against was everything at 99p is a bad idea because it devalues everything. But I think, if you have that kind of leading thing. But we got a wonderful email from Darren James, who check out Darren at soulcat.co.uk. And Darren got in touch and she said, I've just listened to your latest podcast episode and hope I'm not too late to the party with my 2 cents. She says, it was a perfect episode for me as I'm about to launch the paperback of my first book, Soul Cat. So it got the creative juices flowing for ideas. My book is cat themed and my launch event was going to be in my local cat cafe, but after months of planning it fell through. Gutted wasn't the word. So I'm doing it at my local indie bookshop, who are awesome, so that'll be brilliant, but I've got a month to market it. And she says, I'm joining in the 99p debate. I launched my book on Kindle at Christmas and I started with a promotional rate of $1.99, raising it to $3.99 in the new year. My book took me 8.5 years to write. It includes photos and beautiful commissioned illustrations, so the thought of selling it for 99p is kind of sickening. It may not be the greatest literary work, but as you pointed out, the amount of effort that goes into completing a book deserves much more than the price of half a coffee. I love the point made about Mother's Day cards being more expensive than a book, and that's something we spoke about with Erica as well. I'm now considering adding book plates as a limited gift edition of Soul Cat. I also love the tip idea and wonder how many people would actually go to your website to leave a tip for a book they've paid 99p or $1.99 for. I hope you're having a fab weekend. I'm off to finish the poster for my book launch and start getting the word out. So good luck with that, Darren. Go to soulcat.co.uk. There may be a gift edition there now.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And interestingly, cat cafes. I've seen one of those.
We've got one in Herne Bay. We've got one in Herne Bay.
I was in where was I? San Francisco? No, Seattle. That's right. I was in Seattle, walking down one of their very, sharp, steep streets, and I walked past this. Like, it just had windows, and I peered in. And I was like, what is going on in there? They had nothing on the front, so I didn't know what it was. And I'd never even heard of one before then. Absolutely brilliant. It's just like, how would you describe it to people who've never experienced a cat cafe before?
Well, I don't know. I'm allergic to anything with 4 legs and fur, so it's a living nightmare for me.
I can imagine.
I couldn't go in there. I couldn't do it. But following on as well, do you remember you had the idea of putting in a sort of a tipping sheet? So, Ivan Wainwright got in touch. He said, after listening to your latest bestseller episode, I was inspired to create some free book plates people can download and put inside my novel to give as a Mother's Day gift. So if you want to check those out, go to ivanwainwright.com, and he's got beautiful Mother's Day book plates. So yeah, people, this is really taking off. And on a slightly different tack, and I just want to plug this because it's so much fun. And a friend of the podcast and member of the BXP team, Gavin G. Smith, who writes fantastic, great science fiction with a kind of a military bent to it as well. And he was on a podcast recently called Authorized Novelizations Podcast, talking about Alan Dean Foster's novelization of Aliens. If you're an Alien or Aliens fan, oh my God, this is catnip. I'm talking about cats. Total catnip. I had so much fun listening to this. It's novelizations are one of my, I could do specialist subject on that. Mastermind. So Gavin is so much fun on that. So do check that out.
Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. Well, brilliant stuff. And to everyone who's interested in continuing the debate of the 99p, tell us your successes, tell us your rants, join me in ranting and starting a campaign to say books should be not priced at less than $4.99. Let's all get that price up there. But also, I'm really curious to find out about people who are going to try this tipping idea. So the basic idea is you put a kind of a tip page on your website for every book that you create, and you just stick up a PayPal box or whatever. I mean, there's just whatever that takes money, and then put it in your book. Say at the bottom and last page of your book, as inspired by the bestseller experiment. If you've enjoyed bestsellerexperiment.com, if you've enjoyed this book and you feel that and you bought it on promotion, or you feel it's worth more, please support my future books by sending me a tip.
A lot of authors are doing that. So, I see authors saying, look, I've got a Ko-fi account. If you want to tip, if you feel like I've been, and it's unlike Patreon, which requires, regular
signing
donations
up,
or whatever.
Yeah.
You can just bung a few quid in. So I don't know how successful anyone is on that. Is it pennies or pounds? If anyone out there is doing it.
Have you ever seen it though in the back of a book? I've never actually seen it in the back of a book where someone's actually had a tip page where they've actually, because I think that's the key. I think you've got to get somebody, if they've got to the end of your book, they'll see that page, which means they've read your whole book. Unless they're one of those cheeky people that go to the last page and they read it first, which I know some people do, and I don't get that. That's another rant. But anyway, putting that aside, it's like you get to that tip page, and if somebody's finished your book and they've had this wonderful journey with you as an author, that's the time where they might feel, I'll just go put a QR code in there and let them just scan it with their phone, and they might chuck in a couple of quid. The thing is, I'm doing a similar thing. I've done a similar thing with music for a number of years. There's a site out there called Bandcamp, and the way Bandcamp works is great. You can buy the album, you can download, high quality, like WAV files they call them. Actually, if you want to go check out Urban Myth Club on Bandcamp, you can go and see what we're doing there. But what the really nice thing is that when you actually purchase the album, it says it's a minimum of, I think, $7.99. And I cannot begin to tell you, Mark, over the years, the amount of people who've put in more than $7.99. There was one chap once that he just chucked in $30. He thought, I want to support these guys. And he paid $30. So you just never know. And so people really do genuinely support the creative arts. And I think if someone becomes a fan of yours and they really want you to keep writing, things like that can really encourage you as an author. So if you're a reader, why not think about doing that? Why not just email your favorite author and say, I really enjoyed your book. I only paid $2.99. It's not worth that at all. It's worth at least $10. I want to send you some money. How can I do it? And see if you get a response, because, it works both ways as well. So anyway, something to be continued maybe over the rest of this year. A nice theme to play with.
Very good.
Excellent stuff. Mr. Stay, I think we're coming towards the end of this show. Is there anything else you wanted to share on social media or?
No, social media is all good. If you want to get in touch, folks, drop us a line. We're at, as Darren did, via email. Go to bestsellerexperiment.com. There's an email, our contact tab there. On Facebook, we're Bestseller Experiment. Twitter and Instagram, we are at BestsellerXP. Please subscribe on your podcatcher. Don't ever miss it. I'll tell you what, I've been recording interviews. We've got some cracking interviews coming up. Really, really good stuff coming up. So do not miss out. And Mr. D, you asked for authors that people want to get on the show. We've had a few of those already. I've put feelers out there. I've emailed people, so we could be getting some really, really interesting guests on the show as well. But hang around. At the end of this podcast, we've got a clip of the audiobook of Mothers and Daughters, read by none other than BAFTA nominee and Olivier Award-winning actor Juliet Stevenson, who you'll know from films like Truly, Madly, Deeply. So that's a little bonus this week, so hang around for that.
Brilliant stuff. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Mark. It's an absolute pleasure as always. And if you would like to nail down your habits, come and join Mark and I at the Bestseller Academy. It's lifelong benefits, folks. Lifelong benefits. Academy.bestsellerexperiment.com. It will revolutionize and change your writing life. And you will also get to hang out with some of the coolest, funnest, most inspiring writers out there, because you know what? They're all there. They're all attracted to what we're like putting out there right now. And it's great. It's absolutely brilliant. So come and join us there. And if you would like to just get started on the very first habit you should all be doing, 200 words a day, it's the 200wordchallenge.com. Join the newsletter by coming to the website, bestsellerexperiment.com, and clicking on the newsletter tab, and you'll get an update every week about what our new episode is about. So, Mr. Stay, have a fantastic week.
You too, sir.
Enjoy.
Habitology starts here.
Absolutely. And listen out for the audio clip following the music. All right, folks, have a great week. And it's a goodbye from Mark 1.
And a goodbye from Mark 2. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Chapter 1. Martha made sure the bathroom door was firmly shut. Which was stupid. The door was either shut or it wasn't. Just as there were no degrees of being pregnant, you either were or you weren't. And that was something she knew all about. The not being pregnant part, that was. She was all too familiar with that state of affairs. Opening the package which she had bought on the way home, she followed the instructions to the letter. Not that she needed to read the leaflet contained within the small box. She knew what she had to do. Afterwards, and while counting the seconds away in her head, she flushed the loo, then washed and dried her hands. When she'd reached 120, she added on an extra 30 seconds in the hope they would make all the difference. They didn't. As before, the appearance of the minus sign told her that once again she and Tom had failed in their attempt to create a baby. This time she had really thought it might happen, that she was pregnant. She had convinced herself that this month she felt different, that her body was already nurturing a tiny speck of miraculous life. But it was just a cruel false alarm, or no more than a case of wishful thinking. Cross with herself for putting too much store in being 8 days late, for allowing her hopes to be raised, she stared at her face in the mirror above the basin. Too soon to panic, she told herself. She was only 35. There was plenty of time yet for her to become a mother. The important thing was to remain relaxed about it. Anxiety, she reminded herself, would only make things worse. Besides, she wasn't the worrying kind. She was Martha Adams. Cool-headed and practical Martha. Efficient Martha. Reliable Martha. As Dad used to say of her, if you needed a steady pair of hands, then Martha was your girl. Pep talk over, the disappointment in her face now replaced with a determined smile. She put the pregnancy kit back inside the chemist's bag, screwed it up, and put it in the bin under the basin in the marble-topped vanity unit. She then scraped her shoulder-length dark hair back into an obedient ponytail. Mum had described her hair that way when she'd been a child. "You're lucky to have such obedient hair, Martha," she would say while brushing it ready for a day at school. "It's so perfectly thick and straight. It will always do what you want it to do." In contrast, Her sister, Willow, had baby-fine blonde hair that had a careless way about it. As a girl, Willow's plaits had nearly always worn themselves loose by the time the lunchtime bell rang. Downstairs in the kitchen, Tom was chopping onions with an ostentatious dexterity he had learned while on a cookery course Martha had given him for his 40th birthday earlier that year. An avid fan of MasterChef, he never missed an episode. He loved to cook. He read cookery books the way most people read novels, devouring them page by page, word by word. "There's a bottle of wine open in the fridge," he said, tipping the onions into a large ceramic frying pan. When she'd poured out 2 glasses of Cloudy Bay, Martha asked him how his day had gone. "Oh, you know, same old, for a Monday," he said, deftly crushing a garlic clove beneath the blade of a knife by banging it with his fist. "How about you?" She tried to think back to her day in the office before she came home with the pregnancy test kit and the day was ruined. Before that small seed of hope that had taken root in the last few days was ripped from her. Before she felt... Well, never mind all that. "A bit like yours," she said with a shrug. Same old. He smiled and added the garlic to the frying pan. "Pass me those mushrooms, will you?" She did as he said, then sipped her wine. Her friends and family said she was lucky to have married a man like Tom, a man who was the perfect embodiment of patience and so handy in the kitchen. They were right. She was lucky. A previous boyfriend had dumped her with the damning criticism that she was too organized and sensible. She didn't think she'd ever felt more insulted, but had then rallied with the acknowledgement that she was who she was, and that was that. Amazingly, Tom loved her for just that reason. "If I wanted an impractical and empty-headed girlfriend, I wouldn't now be sitting here with you," he'd said when she'd warned him what she was like on their 3rd date. She hadn't seen any point in things progressing between them if he was hoping to discover that hiding beneath the tough exterior there was actually a hopelessly incapable girl longing to have her life organized by a strong man. There really wasn't. As for how she felt about Tom, she loved him with her head as much as her heart. She loved that he regarded the two of them the way she did, as an equal partnership, a strong team that together could face any challenge thrown at them. Their life goals were probably the same as most people's, the desire for a fulfilling work life combined with having children and a nice home. 2 of those things they had accomplished with relative ease. It was just the small matter of conception they had yet to achieve. "What are you making?" she asked. "Mushroom risotto topped with a sprinkling of toasted walnuts and a drizzle of walnut oil. That okay with you?" "More than okay." "Do you want a salad to go with it? Or what about some kale?" Feeding her with good, wholesome food was Tom's way of preparing her body for creating and carrying a new human life. He regularly scoured the internet for the latest superfoods that would aid their ability to have a child. Cutting out alcohol should have been on the list of do's and don'ts, but they had both agreed a glass or 2 on alternate evenings would help them relax. Of course, the moment Martha became pregnant, she wouldn't dream of touching alcohol. Poor caffeine, poor soft cheese, and whatever else was deemed harmful. If there was one thing she was good at, it was abiding by rules. She was a stickler for rules. She was pretty good at making them, too. "Thou shalt not break my 10 commandments. So says Martha Miller." That was what her sister used to say when they were children, and when Martha would invent a game for them to play. It would start simply enough, like pretending they were shipwrecked on a deserted island and had to make a camp before it was dark. It was all imaginary play. The island was the Turkish rug in the hall, and the tent was an old sheet pegged over Mum's clothes area. But at some point, Willow would lose interest because Martha would keep devising things they could or could not do, like why Willow's oversized, cuddly polar bear couldn't join them on the island. "We're not an island in the Antarctic," Martha would point out, helpfully in her opinion. "We're marooned on a tropical island. Polar bears would find it too hot, and they don't eat coconuts, do they?" "They might if they were given the chance," Willow would say. They had finished eating supper and were loading the dishwasher when Martha was seized with a depressingly familiar cramping sensation in her stomach. It was confirmation, as if she needed it, of what she already knew. It drew a defeated sigh from her, which she immediately tried to cover up by pretending to cough. "You all right?" asked Tom. "A tickle in my throat," she said. She rarely lied to Tom, and when she did, it was usually a white lie to keep a surprise from him, like the time she had organised a secret weekend away in Venice for their first wedding anniversary. Just as she did with everything, she'd planned it down to the last detail, other than factoring in that Tom had planned a surprise of his own. "That puts paid to the dinner reservation I'd made for us," he'd said with a laugh when she'd presented him with a card and their flight reservations. But now she found that trying for a baby, what a ghastly phrase that was, had turned her into a wife who regularly sneaked around behind her husband's back. They were only small indiscretions that she committed, like not telling Tom about the pregnancy test kits she bought, or about the baby clothes she had smuggled into the house and kept hidden in the wardrobe in the guest bedroom. She couldn't bring herself to share any of this with Tom, for fear of him thinking she was becoming obsessed with having a baby. Because if he suspected that was the case, he might also start to think that was all she cared about, to the exclusion of him. It happened all the time. Couples torn apart through not being able to conceive. She didn't want that to happen to them. They were stronger than that. She was stronger than that. Through sheer force of stubborn tenacity, she would make life bend to her will. She was not her father's daughter for nothing. But she was getting far too ahead of herself. They'd only been trying to get pregnant for 10 months. It was no time at all. It was just that she was so used to getting things done, methodically ticking items off her list of things to do. As an inveterate list maker, she liked to start her day with a list of tasks she had to achieve, both at work and at home. It gave her a sense of purpose and achievement. She never actually wrote down the words, "make a baby," but it was there in invisible ink, right at the top of every list. Thinking of today's to-do list, she had one other outstanding job to tick off, and that was to speak to her sister. She would need Willow's support if there was to be any chance of convincing their mother that it was time now to consider the future and do the sensible thing. Not that Willow knew the first thing about being sensible, and really Mum wasn't much better either. During the coronavirus pandemic, Martha had nagged her mother constantly to be careful and not risk leaving the house. But Mum had been adamant that she should do her bit to help in her local community. Along with a team of others, she had shopped for the elderly and vulnerable and made sure they were coping with the fear and loneliness of lockdown. Martha had been convinced that her mother would catch the virus just as Tom's poor mother had. Having lost Dad only months before anything was known about the coronavirus, the thought of losing Mum as well would have just been too much to bear. It was the aftermath of that worry that was behind Martha's determination now to make Mum accept that it would be better if she sold Anchor House and moved from West Sussex to be conveniently nearer to her daughters. Especially if there was a grandchild for her to help out with. With Willow on side, there might be a greater chance of convincing Mum that it would be the sensible thing to do.